Letty too, a key figure and right-hand woman of billionaire Pham Nhat Vuong, and known as the female Tiger General of the Vietnamese automotive industry. On 23, this female vice president rang the opening bell, making VinFast the first Vietnamese company to be listed on the Nasdaq. At the close of trading, VinFast shares surpassed the 37 mark, resulting in an impressive increase in the company's market capitalization. Despite its ambitious goal of conquering the global market, VinFast's actual strength remains met with considerable skepticism.
Why is that?
VinFast was founded in 2017 by Vingroup, a diversified conglomerate operating primarily in real estate and retail. The founder and current chairman of the group is Mr. Pham Nhat Vuong, the richest man in Vietnam with an estimated net worth of nearly $5 billion. In 2017, Vuong decided to establish an automobile manufacturing business called VinFast. The concept behind the VinFast slogan, Vietnam style, safety innovation pioneering, likely reflects the company's desire to develop the automotive manufacturing industry in Vietnam. VinFast started by producing gasoline-powered cars, with its two most prominent product lines being Fadel and Lux. At the end of 2020, the company unexpectedly unveiled its first electric vehicle. The listed price at the time for both the car and the battery was around 900 million VND, equivalent to 1,000 USD. VinFast made a strategic decision to eliminate the production of internal combustion engine cars and focus entirely on electric vehicles. Alongside this shift is the goal of expanding beyond Vietnam's borders. This is a realistic target, because in terms of scale, the domestic market is still too small. Vietnam is a developing country with an average per capita income of approximately 8 million VND per month in 2022. With this income level, it's clear that the majority of people won't be able to afford a car. Therefore, even though the population has surpassed 100 million, car sales in 2022 only reached just over 500. That's a record for the Vietnamese automotive industry. However, compared to the nearly 14 million units sold annually in the US, this record figure is still very modest. Therefore, in order to become a leading automotive manufacturer, VinFast must expand its business overseas, and they chose the United States as one of their first destinations. VinFast has opened a showroom in California and is accepting reservations from customers. They also shipped 99 electric vehicles to the US West Coast in November 2022 and delivered them to American customers just 4 months later. And not long after, VinFast successfully listed its name on Nasdaq, one of the world's largest stock exchanges. VinFast's efforts to penetrate the US market took place in just 2 years. However, things would probably have been much more difficult without the following character. This is Lawrence Ho, son of the late casino king Stanley Ho, and also chairman of Black Spade Capital. He is believed to be the figure who helped VinFast list on the Nasdaq through a merger with Black Spade Acquisition, a company within his ecosystem. It is a special-purpose acquisition company. Essentially, a SPAC is a shell company and does not engage in the actual trading or sale of any goods or services. SPACs are created with the sole purpose of finding and merging with a target company in order to take that company public. In this case, Black Spade merged with VinFast to list VinFast on the Nasdaq. Following the transaction, SPAC will hold a 1-cent stake in VinFast. The remaining 99% of the shares are owned by the parent company, Vingroup. Notably, Black Spade's shareholders quickly divested by selling off more than 80% of their shares. According to Reuters, the amount of capital withdrawn was worth approximately $147 million. This action reduced the amount of money VinFast raised from the deal to only about $28. A very modest figure compared to their rate of spending. Since fully transitioning to electric vehicle production, VinFast has recorded 2 consecutive losses of nearly 50,000 billion over 57 VND in 2022-23, respectively. This means VinFast is burning through more than 2 billion USD a year. To date, VinFast's main source of support remains Vingroup and Mr. In 2023, VinFast received a 500 million grant from Vingroup, along with a 1 billion credit line. They also received 1 billion in support from Mr. Vong, equivalent to about 20% of his assets. This brings VinFast's total liquidity to 2. At this rate of spending, the 5 billion received from Vingroup and Mr. Vong could evaporate within a year. Therefore, it can be said that the listing through a SPAC only brought VinFast a very small amount of money. So, what does the 85 billion valuation after the first day of trading mean? There's a Vietnamese saying, once trust is broken, it's broken forever. However, that statement probably doesn't apply to electric vehicle companies going public in the US. 2020. Many electric vehicle companies launched their products to the public with unreasonable pricing. This has happened more than once. Let's look at the following 2 examples from Lucid and Rivian. In 2021, both of these electric vehicle companies went public through empty companies, or SPACs. Lucid and Rivian are valued at staggering 91 million and 121 million, respectively. However, since then, the value of both has continuously plummeted. Owning these stocks is clearly a wrong decision for any investor. Speaking of VinFast, even if it represents a major breakthrough for a Vietnamese enterprise, the recent listing is highly likely to continue this trend. Let's look at the price performance of VinFast's VFS stock during its first 15 days of trading on the Nasdaq. From August 15 to August 30, the stock price jumped from 22 per share at its debut to nearly 9 per share in just under 2 weeks of trading. This has pushed VinFast's market valuation far beyond that of other well-known automakers, such as Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Ford, increasing it from 85 billion to approximately 190 billion. This figure is nearly 5 times larger than the combined market capitalization of the 3 banks, Techcombank, BIDV, and Viet Nam listed on the HOSE as of the end of February 2024. However, just over a month later, things took a turn for VinFast. VinFast shares at 7.49 on, pulling the company's market capitalization down more than tenfold to 17. Explaining this sharp fluctuation in a short period, many experts believe the reason lies in the extremely low volume of VinFast shares freely traded on the market. Of the more than 3 billion VFS shares outstanding, only about 5 million VFS shares are freely traded on the US stock market. When there are too few freely traded shares, even a small amount of buying pressure can push the stock price to an unreasonable level. The enormous valuation figure in VinFast's early trading days did not reflect any real value or financial strength. If we set aside market expectations, is VinFast actually doing well in business? This is Tran Van Hong, the owner of the YouTube channel GoGo TV with over 600. In 2021, this YouTuber was involved in a controversy with VinFast after posting a video about the Lux A2.0 model. However, following that positive review, the person expressed disappointment with the car's quality in several aspects, from the tires and windshield wipers to some strange noises when braking and opening the car doors. After only 2 months of using the car, Hong had to take it in for repairs more than 10 times. VinFast immediately sued the YouTuber for spreading false information that damages the reputation and material interests of the VinFast brand, and successfully obtained the video's removal. However, Hong's video was quickly reposted on several other channels. Hong's experience may not represent that of all Vietnamese users. However, VinFast's aggressive handling of negative online reviews has inadvertently damaged its image domestically. 2 years have passed, and perhaps these kinds of review videos are no longer something VinFast is too concerned about. VinFast delivered its first electric vehicles in the United States. 2024. 1 year later, VinFast is currently selling 2 models. the VF9. Here. Of those, the cheapest version is the VF8 Eco, which has a range of 264 miles and a price tag of $46,000. Because they are assembled in Vietnam, VinFast electric vehicles are not eligible for the 7 tax credit. Under the U.S. government's Inflation Reduction Act, VinFast is building a factory in North Carolina to enable them to access that subsidy. However, according to the latest plan, the factory will not officially begin operations until 2025. To make it easier to understand, let's make a comparison. This is the Volkswagen ID 4 Pro Electric. The car has a range of 275 miles and is being sold for approximately $44,000. Because it's assembled in the US, the German automaker can deduct a 7,500 tax credit from the selling price of this model. This helps bring the actual selling price of the ID 4 down to just 6,500, 20% lower than the VF8 Eco model, but with a better range. Tesla's Model Y is another similar case, boasting a superior range of 310 miles but priced at only $32,000 after tax. Clearly, VinFast's competitiveness against major brands in the US is quite low. If we disregard the price issue, can the quality of VinFast vehicles help change the landscape? When it came to the first VFAs sold in the US, leading automotive review magazines there gave mostly negative reviews. Although praising VinFast's efforts, the magazines Car and Driver and Motor Trend argued that the VF8 had many flaws and was not convincing enough for American consumers to buy it. Road Track magazine and Jalopnik were even more negative, describing the VF8 as unacceptable and asserting that the model was not ready for the US market. If you browse popular forums like Reddit, you'll also come across quite a few negative reviews about the VF8 in particular and VinFast in general. The common thread in these comments is that they all focus on technical flaws in the vehicle, including problems with the air conditioning system or the voice-assisted driver assistance feature. Some also complained about malfunctions with the control panel. Worse still, just 2 months after the first deliveries, VinFast was forced to recall all 999 VF8 vehicles due to a software error on the information display screen. According to the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, this malfunction could increase the risk of collisions, because drivers cannot see important information while driving. It's not uncommon for a car manufacturer to recall its products for safety reasons. In fact, some vehicle recalls have been on a much larger scale, particularly the global recall of 5 million Toyota vehicles in 2015. However, the incident that occurred with VinFast just 2 months after delivery is not a good sign. Faced with challenges in the US, what did VinFast do? VinFast announced changes to its leadership team. Pham Net Vuong will take over the position of Chief Executive Officer from Ms. Lee Thi Tu Thuy will move from her role as CEO of VinFast to assume the position of Chairwoman of the Board of Directors, currently held by Pham Net Vuong. The reason given was to prepare for the next phase of development. Just 1 day later, VinFast announced plans to enter the Indian market with a $2 billion factory project, with a total of 25 million vehicles sold in 23. India has become the third largest car market globally. However, the potential for VinFast in India is quite low, as the majority of the electric vehicle market there is currently dominated by a domestic company. Besides India, VinFast is also targeting the Indonesian market, having showcased several products at the Indonesia International Motor Show 2024, along with its intention to invest $200 million in a factory by 2026. Initial entry into the market has been promising, with 3 Indonesian companies already registering to purchase 600 VinFast electric vehicles. However, many market surveys show that local people are still hesitant about owning electric vehicles. This concern stems from low resale value and a lack of charging station infrastructure. Another challenge is the relatively low rate of private car ownership in Indonesia. With only 99 cars, it is highly likely that the VinFast factory here will supply electric vehicles to neighboring markets such as Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. As these markets all use right-hand drive vehicles like Indonesia, VinFast also plans to bring 1,000 VFA vehicles to the European market and anticipates distributing more models to the Omani market in the Middle East. It is clear Vuong is actively expanding his market reach. However, it is difficult to predict VinFast's future, as core issues regarding product quality and financial resources have yet to be fully resolved. Is VinFast taking too much of a risk? Maybe. Is VinFast at risk of bankruptcy? That's possible. But even Elon Musk's Tesla, which once nearly filed for bankruptcy, is now one of the world's largest companies. So VinFast doesn't necessarily have lost all hope.